All right. So hi everybody. This is Pink Camera Magic here, Amanda, and with me I have the legendary Carlos Miller out of Miami. And for those of you who don't know, Carlos Miller's he's the founder of Photography is Not a Crime, and that was in 2007, right? Started there. Okay, and I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can. I'm sorry.
Okay, 2007. I'll speak up.
Okay, and so if you don't mind, for those who don't know, if you could kind of tell a little bit about yourself and how you got started with PINAC.
Cool. Okay. Well, in 2000, I'll give you more background. I am a journalist. I've been a journalist for a long time. I went to school for journalism. This is all I've done pretty much. Well, I've waited tables, but this is all I've done professionally with so much passion, and I went to school with it. And in 2004, I was working for the Arizona Republic in Arizona, in Phoenix, and I'm covering the police beat. And the police beat was something I covered for a long time. Yeah, I covered it in New Mexico. I covered it in Southern California. In New Mexico, I lived in Deming. I worked for a newspaper called the Deming Headlight, where I covered local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, state law enforcement. We're on the border, so there's a lot going on there. So not many reporters like to report on police, I've discovered, because it's one of those beats that you have to deal with cops, and they try to intimidate people. As we all know, they do the same to the media, and a lot of journalists, they get caught up in this whole relationship with cops, where they want to be their friends, they want to be nice, they don't want to piss them off too much. Because what happens is when you piss cops off as a reporter, as I've learned, is the PIOs, the public information officers, they won't talk to you. Which is what they did to me in Arizona. And it was okay, because I had sources within the police department, including an assistant police chief at the time, who gave me some good tips on cops who were dirty. So these cops were complaining to my editors and saying, well, Carlos is not being too fair. And
fair.
And I would get into the office, and the editors said, well, you're not being too fair to the cops. And I was like, well, show me one story that's not accurate. Show me one story that I made it up, because then I will acknowledge that, and I'll apologize, and I'll address that. But they couldn't. They were just negative stories, but these are stories of cops getting, and the same shit we're writing about now, except we didn't have the video. But these are actually, these tips were coming from inside the police department. So anyway, I basically ran my welcome at that newspaper, the Arizona Republic, after 4 years, and I left. And I came back to Miami, where I'm born and raised, and my goal at the time was to launch a media business where I would take pictures, I would write articles for travel magazines. And living in Miami is it's a hot spot for tourists, so that was what I was trying to do. And I wasn't really getting it off the ground, because at the time, digital cameras were getting much more popular, much more affordable. So people you had your average people who were never photographers taking pictures and giving them to Flickr, putting them up on Flickr, and then the travel magazines would use those photos. So they wouldn't want to hire me, because I was charging professional rates, which were really good at the time. Anyway, so I was freelancing for local websites, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, because I told myself I was not going back to the corporate media. It was a really weird situation. I felt it was kind of a crazy time in my life. I was going through some huge transitions. I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to go to corporate media, but I didn't want to go to PR, is what most journalists would do, because I don't really think I'm cut out for PR. I'm a very honest person, and PR, you got to soften things up. I like to tell the truth as hard as it can be, as real as it can be, and I want to be as vivid as I can be with the truth. So, I was freelancing for local websites, and I was doing a story for a local website called Category 305, which is no longer in existence. And I was doing a story about gentrification in a neighborhood called the Upper East Side, which is renowned in Miami for prostitution, drugs, and I'm born and raised here. I know that, you go through that neighborhood, it's like every city has this neighborhood, probably,
Bad news.
Right.
Lock your doors kind of neighborhood.
Right. Every city, I've noticed, I've done a lot of traveling, and every city has that neighborhood, and that was Biscayne Boulevard. At the time, though, there was new restaurants moving in, coffee shops, and people were moving in. So that was a story, because there still had an element of the prostitution, the drugs, the crime, and plus people were moving in. And it was like, at the time, there was a lot of gay people moving in, so they were opening up gay bars there. And it was kind of this weird mix, and everything was, everybody was getting along and everything, but now it's kind of like, how long is this going to last? Because how long before everyone gets pushed out? So I'm doing a story, I'm talking to my editor, I see a bunch of cops up there threatening to arrest this guy. I had no idea what was going on. I heard a lot of yelling. I hung up with the editor, and I started taking pictures with a telephoto lens. I started taking pictures. My goal was to take some pictures and move on, you know, because they were not really arresting him. They're just yelling at him. Crime was a part of the story, but it wasn't really the only part. So I was going to move on. My goal was to actually interview the prostitutes and also interview the business owners, which I eventually did. But at that time, no, I couldn't do it because I was arrested. So I started taking their pictures. These cops come up and they told me, you know, excuse me, can we help you? I said, I'm just a reporter, you know, I'm doing my job. You know, I didn't want to really get into it with them because I didn't want to obstruct or interfere. I wanted them to do their job. I wanted them to allow me to do my job. And, you know, just like I've done many times before, except when I worked at newspapers, I had a press pass from the local newspaper. So the cops would come up and harass me, and I would tell them, look, I'm here for, you know, let me talk to a PIO. The PIOs would usually come up, they would put up the yellow tape. And it's this game you play with reporters, you know, but they don't really, that night, it was really, they didn't care. They didn't know who I was. You know, I wasn't working for the Miami Herald. They didn't know.
Right, you weren't a reporter at that point. You were just a bystander, I suppose.
Yeah, in their eyes. You know, I mean, I've always considered myself a reporter because I'm always ready to do a story, you know, and at any moment I can be a reporter, I can write a story. Breaking news has always been my specialty. So, you know, so I'm there, yeah, but they didn't care. So they just told me, they kept telling me to leave, and I just stood my ground, and I said, no, I'm not leaving, I'm going to stay here. And just to give you more background, you know, from 2004 to 2007, after I had returned to Miami, you know, I'd been away for 10 years. I've lived away, I lived in Europe, I lived in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. And so I was getting reacquainted with the city I grew up in. So I would do that by going around taking pictures. And, you know, as I said, I was trying to start this business, so I was going around taking pictures of whatever is photogenic, and Miami, you have a lot of stuff like that. So, you know, and I would always get harassed by these fucking customs agents, or depending where I was at, the cops. There's always somebody taking a picture of a bridge. The customs agents came up to me when I was at the Port of Miami, and they would always give me shit, and I would always tell them I have the right to take pictures, but, you know, I always gave them my identification. I always, sure, whatever, because I didn't want to go to jail. You know, at that time I was like, shit, and I'm just trying to, you know, build a career here, build a new business here, you know, just do something here with my life. And so I didn't want to go to jail. Except this night, I was actually getting paid. I was on assignment for, and I was already pissed off about these previous times. And I said, where does it stop? Because this was during the whole, you know, 9/11. We were still under the whole, you know, George Bush was still president, and everybody was still, you know, 9/11 changed everything. So allowing their rights, they would give up their rights, you know, people in the name of safety. And this was a trend. This was happening. And it was especially happening to photographers who were just going around taking pictures, and they were told, no, you're not allowed. And you know, and so it was this kind of movement that was beginning. It wasn't really a movement, but it was these, you would hear these stories on different websites. You know, there was not one site dedicated to this issue. And you know, so I would follow these stories and stuff, and because I was part of it too, I was getting harassed. And, you know, even when I worked at newspapers, you know, sometimes this would happen, and sometimes, you know, we would have to back down, because if you're in a deadline, you have to make the deadline. You can't just go to jail and then tell you that, because they're not going to care about that, you know. So, you know, so it's always been an issue with me. And
so does something like that influence your decision to decide to be independent versus working for the corporate media?
Yes. Well, the corporate media, I mean, I told you, because I'm, you know, when they call you into the office and say you're not writing enough, you're not being fair to the cops, when your job is to cover the brief, that's the beat. It ain't write fluffy pieces. That's what they wanted. They had me do like a fluff piece a week for the community sections of the newspaper, which I had to do. You know, I did that, but then of course it ate into the time I could do the other articles that I wanted to do, which I guess that was their goal. You know, I can't work for that. You know, that's pointless. That might as well work for a PR agency, and at least you get paid well there, because in journalism, you know, you don't get paid well in journalism.
But you probably wouldn't be happy doing that though either.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be happy, but, you know, but as long as I accept it for what it is, then, you know, at least I know what it is. That's the job. But when I accept a job as a journalist, I I have different expectations, and all journalists should have. So by that night, I said, I'm not going to take it anymore. So I'm not going to back down. I'm taking this shit all the way, and I don't care what happens. But they surprised me. They came after me. They just beat the shit out of me. They really did. They just pounced
Really?
Oh yeah, 5 cops. They beat the shit out of me. They pounded my head into the pavement, and they twisted my arms behind my back, and they're yelling, "Stop resisting! Stop resisting!" And I had like almost $10,000 worth of camera gear on me. I had 2 5Ds at the time, the original 5Ds Canons, or it was one of the first full-frame digital cameras, not the first one. And I had a telephoto lens on one. I had a wide angle on the other one. But these are all what we call L lenses in Canon. I'm talking. These are very high-quality professional gears. My concern was that, they're going to come after me. Okay, if they made a decision to arrest me, fine. Okay, I've already lost that battle, but I'm going to fight it in court. I knew I was going to win this. But then they had to tackle me. They had to trip me. And I wasn't resisting. I was like, guys, take me. I don't give a shit. Take me now. I don't want to. I'm not going to fight these 5 cops, and I'm not going to let them. I don't want them to destroy my camera gear. So that's what they did anyway. They threw me down, and my lenses were cracked. My flash was cracked. My head was cracked. I was bruised all over. They threw me. They charged me with 9 misdemeanors, and I was in jail for like 16 hours, and it was a very traumatizing experience, man. Because I remember I thought I was going to die. They just kept pounding my head into the pavement while twisting my arm and yelling, "Stop resisting!" And these cars are driving by, but it was very dark, and I was thinking, they're going to kill me. I mean, if I just, I wasn't resisting, but I was verbally saying, "What the fuck are you guys doing? You guys, I'm not resisting. Guys, you got me. Just take me. I'm not an idiot. I've covered this police beat long enough to know you don't fight 5 cops. You're not going to win that one." And so anyway, so that's it. That's it. So I got out of jail, and I was very angry. They accused me of standing in the middle of Biscayne Boulevard blocking traffic. Now, Biscayne Boulevard is a very busy street, and if you would stand there, you wouldn't really survive, because these drivers down here won't stop. They'll drive and they'll run you over, and they'll keep going. They're hit and run drivers every day.
Well, that's a hell of a response for blocking traffic.
Right. But the last picture I took shows the traffic behind them. That's the one on the PINAC group, the photography news group. That's the original photo. So, while I'm in jail, I'm reading the police report, because they give you the police report while you're in jail, and I'm reading it, and it's all full of lies, and I was standing in the middle of the street blocking traffic, and all these cars were backed up, and, they were just trying to get me out of the road for my safety, that kind of shit.
They're concerned about your safety then.
Right. So I was thinking of sitting in jail.
Wow.
I'm sitting in jail, talking to everybody, because you're there with a bunch of people. So, everybody wants to know what you did. So I told them what I did, and I told them I'm a journalist. So they like that. So they're all telling me their stories. I'm hearing all these stories, and I've talked to people in there, and people in there who were in there for like almost a year for cannabis, because they couldn't afford whatever they had to, or they got thrown back in there because they couldn't afford the fees or court fines. And it was, I've always, I had been arrested before for bullshit charges when I was younger. So I had been in that jail before, but I'm older now and much more experienced, and I was saying, wow, this is really fucked up. How poor people are getting shacked, and they're telling me the stories, and the whole time I'm in jail, I'm thinking, okay, when I get out of this jail, I'm going to go get my camera back, and if they deleted my images, which I figured they would, I would retrieve those. I would recover those images, because I have software to do that. Because when you accidentally delete photos, which happens, you have to recover them. So it's a pain in the ass to do that. So I knew I was going to do that. But then I got there, and I was so mad. I went into that police department just fucking bitching. I was so mad. And I went to go file an internal. I was naive at the time, too. I would think, yeah, I'm going to file an internal affairs report, which I did. It didn't go anywhere. I guess it went against me eventually. They used it all against me. So I will never go to IA again. And, so they didn't delete the footage. They didn't delete, it wasn't footage, it was photos. And it basically showed the street was behind them. There's no way I could be standing in the middle of the street. My whole arrest is bullshit, because I was standing on a public sidewalk. And that's
Did
it.
they charge you with a crime?
Yeah, 9 misdemeanors. They had 5.
Oh, that's right, 9 misdemeanors. Jeez.
5 counts of disobeying a lawful order.
Okay.
For 5 cops. And they're all the contempt of cop charges: disorderly conduct, obstruction, resisting arrest, and blocking traffic, and 5 counts of disorderly, of the unlawful, not obeying a lawful order. So
did they dismiss them eventually, or what happened with that?
Yeah, okay, well, this is a long story. So
Okay.
I mean, I'll just go on and you just interrupt me if you want me to go quicker. But so yeah, I mean, I was in jail and I got my camera back. So I put it up. I used to post on this website called Democratic Underground. I was a very angry liberal at the time against Bush, and a lot of it had to do with the Patriot Act. A lot of it had to do with shit that I'm still pissed off about. And so I posted up on Democratic Underground, and it went viral, and I was so naive again as the internet, because having worked as a reporter for newspapers, I had an arrogance against a lot of what I would call these unprofessional journalists or these amateurs, all these bloggers. I wouldn't even read the blogs. Like, what? Why would I read blogs? I'm getting paid to write. I went to school for writing. This is all I've ever done that I really took serious. And but they're the ones that started. All these blogs started covering my arrest. It went viral because of the blogs, and it ended up on a site called Boing Boing, which I had no idea what it was at the time. It was really big. It was a site called Dig, which was like the Reddit at the time, and which I had no idea about. And Reddit was around too, but they weren't that big back then. And what's all these little bloggers, or a guy named oh my God, I just can't even think of their name. But all of these photographer bloggers, and especially Miami, the blogosphere was alive with debate. That Carlos Miller, one guy called me an arrogant asshole or arrogant prick. How dare him not back down to cops? And other people were saying, hey, he actually had the right to be there. And it became this whole point of debate. And I was really very fascinated with all this, because the media, the mainstream media, they did write about it. Local 10 did a good story on it. About a week later, after everything was, talked about on the internet, the blog was already on it. And the Miami Herald did a short piece on it, I don't think for their print, but for the internet, for their website. And the New Times did a short piece on it. And, so then I was thinking, well, let me just go to court. The court date was set for May, and my arrest was in February. So in those 2 months, from February to April, everything, because my arrest was a talk for the internet for like a couple of weeks. It was really big. It was just, they kept talking about it, and different people lawyers were talking about it, because everyone had a blog at the time. And, then of course it died down, and I wanted to liven it up again for my trial. So what did I do? I started a blog. I said, well, how am I going to do this? Well, shit, let me just start a blog, right? And I called it Photography is Not a Crime. It's a First Amendment right. That was the original title. It was very long. And I didn't really anticipate this blog to go long. I thought, okay, well, what I want to do is I'll start the blog for the purpose of actually getting the media attention. And maybe, hey, rather than send them a press release, let them see the attention the blog's going to get, because they knew it would get attention, which it did, a lot of attention from the very beginning. Because people what happened to Carlos Miller? Oh, now he has a blog. Okay, now they want to follow the trial, right? And what happened was they delayed the trial. They didn't like, when I say they, it was the state attorney's office. They didn't like that I had started a blog. They didn't like that I was writing about this. They had never seen this before. No one at the time, the blogs were about, I would call them Dear Diary blogs. They were like, cooking, or what I did today, mom blogs,
Right.
just very personal blogs. It was cool. People were able to express themselves, and, and free of, they didn't have to pay anything, or I'm not even sure. Mostly was free. And some people were even making money. A lot of the mom blogs were. So I was learning about all this stuff, and I said, well, let me take this up another notch and just do what I know how to do best, is journalism. Cop journalism. Let me cover this shit. I do it a little differently though, because before I was expected to do things objectively. And there's really, when it comes to objectivity, it doesn't really exist. And when you work at a newspaper and you have reporters they talk every day to the police, the public information officer, they talk every day to the communications director at City Hall, or to the mayor, or the council people. You get to know these people, you get to like these people. They get to like you, you get to friendly with them. But so there's no real objectivity. So when I'm a cop, if a PIO says, no, this is what happened, and then you're just talking to some person that you don't really know, but and I would always take that approach. I would always talk to the people. I would always take journalism from the approach to people. That was my approach. But that's why I didn't really fit in the corporate media, because it's very institutionalized. So they're always going to be very, and I wouldn't say in bed, because it's not like, oh, let's just be in bed together and let's just lie. No, but it just happens subconsciously. It happens. And And so, yeah, naturally, a reporter is going to give the benefit of the doubt to the cop because they know this cop. But the cops use that to their advantage. So, I was, and so I started being just very opinionated, obviously, not just about my case, but people were sending me stuff from around the country because they delayed my trial. I started it on April 28th, and on May 5th was my scheduled trial, like a week later. And they said, shit, we're not going to start a trial now. Now this guy's blog, and people were calling the state attorney's office telling them to drop the charge. No, they weren't going to do that. They were going to double down, and they did. And so I started writing about everybody else, and YouTube had just started. YouTube was started in 2004. So YouTube was still getting a little bit more popular. It was still, the quality of the cameras on phones were not very good. The video cameras were still, video cameras are becoming more affordable and easier to use. Because back in the 90s, a video camera.
Yeah, the big one on your shoulder.
Real professional ones, or you can get a camcorder. But they got easier to use and it got better quality. And so in the beginning, the YouTube videos sucked. There were people that didn't know how to record, and they would put these videos up and they wouldn't even tell you where it took place. They didn't really give a lot of context. So I would reach out to them and interview them and do their story, and they went viral. They would go, because nobody else is writing that. The mainstream media continued to.
Yeah, it's the first of this kind, I would imagine, because I've never heard of anything before PINAC doing this type of journalism.
No, nobody. Well, before, the only organization that was really out there dedicated to cop watching was Cop Watch. They were formed in the 90s and in Berkeley, but they took a different approach. They took the approach of, because it was like mostly like community organizers and some lawyers were involved, so they were taking the approach of defending people. Like if someone's getting pulled over and in a black neighborhood because black people were getting harassed mostly, and they would video record that traffic stop, so in case it goes to court and the cop lies, they'll have the truth. So these videos would never get posted. They would never see the light of day. That was that. So what I did was completely different. I'd say I put the videos up there, against the wishes of many attorneys. Oh no, let's hold that. And I said, well, let's just get it out there and just get attention. Let's get attention because now we get the power. And when I worked as a reporter in New Mexico in the 90s, I had an editor named Harold Coslin for the Las Cruces Sun News, and he's told me, he goes, you will never, because I used to battle these local cops in New Mexico over public records. This is what I've always done. And so, and they would threaten to sue me. And he was one of the better editors. And he goes, you will never win a battle with those who buy ink by the barrel. And what that means is the cops can threaten as much as they want, but we just keep writing article after article after article. As long as we are writing the truth, we will win that war. And so that was my mentality, except I didn't even have to buy the ink anymore. I had the internet. So I would think, wow, this is even easier. So, so I went in hardcore. I went very hardcore with my writing and just didn't hold back, very opinionated, but it was very factual. Anyone who has any intelligence should be able to determine which is opinion, which is facts. It's pretty obvious. And it's very obvious why I'm not objective. I have a beef with the cops, and I still do because they arrested me over and over and over again after that. And, so my attitude now, my philosophy, my journalistic philosophy is to be transparent rather than objective. So yeah, I'm transparent because he's very anti-cop, and I say, well, I'm very distrustful of cops, and I will take the other side of it. I will take the angle of the people. That's what journalism should be. Journalism should give a voice to the people who have no voice, not serve as an extension to the fucking police, as their communications department. And that's what they use it for.
Yeah.
So I kept writing, and they kept delaying the trial, and finally went to trial more than a year later. And by then, PINAC had become pretty popular, nowhere near as it is now. But back then, it was, it had won some awards by the local blogosphere, by a local newspaper, the Sun Sun.
Cool.
I think that was in 2009. That came after it. So, but in 2008, I went to trial, and I was blogging about my trial. It was a 2-day trial, and I blogged about the trial that night after the first night. And so the next morning, I'm like, well, this is what we expect. And the judge did not know about it. And the state attorney, prosecutor told the judge what he's doing. And the judge was so mad. I heard him because I was sitting on the stand, in the witness stand. And he goes, this is such bullshit, and he was so mad because I later learned just a few months prior to being a judge, he was an attorney for the police Law Enforcement Association, or it's some union, the PLEA, whatever.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a
Would you
police.
think that'd be some kind of conflict of interest?
Yes. And then the prosecutor, he was a son of a longtime Sweetwater police officer. Sweetwater is a municipality down here. So yeah, they're both very, very pro-cop. And I made a mistake by testifying. I won't do that again. You know, I really wanted to get my story out there. I was so upset a year and a half of them just trying to destroy my credibility and just, you know, just lying and making up all this shit about me. So I went on the stand and told the truth, but then the prosecutor, by them doing that, because the prosecutor had printed out a whole shitload of blog posts I had written over the years.
Okay.
Some about the Miami PD, a lot of it from stuff all over the country that had nothing to do with my arrest. And if I had not testified, they would not have been able to enter that as evidence, because they would not have been able to determine if I wrote it, which I don't really care, because, you know, I write, you know, I have nothing to hide. But when I got up there, they started twisting things around. So when I got up there, he goes, "Did you write the story?" And I said, "Well, read it to me." You know, and he read it to me. I wrote that. The story was about LAPD beating up kids and beating up journalists during May Day, and it was all caught on video. And it was mostly like Hispanic reporters. I think it was in a Mexican neighborhood or something. The little Mexican kids that were getting beat up. So I was really mad. So I wrote the story, and I compared these cops to Nazis, because they were all dressed up in riot gear. You know, and I did a comparison with Nazis here, just how they did. And, you know, it's just a show, you know. My goal was to open people's eyes, you know, that, you know, we're supposed to be so free and liberated in this country, but it's a myth. And that was a perfect example. And I was saying, look, you know, open your eyes. Like, now we're seeing it on video. And also I wanted, because I had so many people hating me at the time, thinking, oh, this Carl, you know, look, it's not just me, you know, there's all these other people. You know, I wanted to show there was some kind of pattern here with police in this country. So they twisted it around, and then he's like, "Did you write that?" And he goes, he told the jury that I feel that I purposely got myself arrested to start a blog because I feel persecuted by Nazis. I'm not even Jewish, you know, and he told, and so I was kind of like sleepy with the prosecutor, you know, and I guess the jury got turned off, because when I stopped testifying, I sat down and they sent one of the extra jurors home. She told the bailiff that if I had not testified, I would have walked, but they did not like me. So they convicted me of resisting arrest, although they acquitted me of all the other charges. So and it was all because the judge allowed improper evidence. The improper evidence was the whole thing about the LAPD. You know, it was just like, you wrote the story, but this has nothing to do with my arrest, you know. And I wrote it like a year later. And it's in California. It had nothing to do with my arrest, but they made it part of my arrest. So the appellate court say, you know, they overturned it on that, and also on the fact that the judge gave me a harsher sentence than recommended by the prosecutor, because I did not. He said I was not. How did he say that? There's a word it'll come to me. That basically I had no regret. That I was not remorseful. I showed no remorse. And I'm not going to show remorse for photograph.
Remorse for getting your head bashed in.
Yeah, remorse for that, you know, but so that became so I appealed it pro se, and had a lawyer friend of mine help me as far as, you know, writing the format and all that, you know, legalese, because I wasn't used to that. But I learned it, I picked it up, and I spent weeks in the University of Miami Law Library writing this appeal, and I filed it and had the conviction overturned. Meanwhile. Yeah, so that's when people started taking my blog very seriously after that, because a lot of people were like hating on me. I had a lot of people saying, this guy, what does he think he is? Who does he think he is? You know, he had no respect for the cops, all this shit. And while I was on probation, I was in a year probation, I was arrested a second time in 2009 for taking pictures of cops, and I had to keep my mouth shut, because I couldn't blog about it because my appeal was still pending. So I didn't want these judges to say, "Oh my God, you got arrested again." And even though they shouldn't, but you know how things are, they probably would use that against me. So I had to keep that under wraps. And so when I won the appeal, then I wrote about the appeal, and I talked about my arrest. The Miami New Times wrote a funny story about it. And who am I writing for now as the medical marijuana reporter, the Miami New Times. So they've always been very supportive over the years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so So I had to go to court for the second arrest, and it was the same judge for the first arrest.
Did he recognize you and remember you from the other?
Well, I mean, we had my attorney asked him to recuse himself, and he had no idea I had won the appeal because this was in early January. I got notice from the appeal like before Christmas, like towards the end of December, so nothing was happening then. And so he goes, I had no idea. I remember, I will never forget his face. I had no idea. He had this look of shock on his face. So my attorney said, look, you either recuse yourself or we asked you to recuse yourself. And you are going to end up recused because, this guy just wants to appeal and now you're going to be the judge. So no, he had to recuse it. So they had to reschedule a trial. The cop didn't show up to court that day anyway, but they rescheduled it. I had another judge and the cop didn't show up that day either. They dropped the charge. I was arrested a third time by a PIO, Nancy Perez, and
yes,
2012.
To the Occupy Miami, right?
Occupy Miami, right?
Yeah, so, I was going to bring that up next.
Right, so I'm going to be jumping all over the place. So yeah, after that appeal victory, and after that, it was 2010, early 2010. That is, almost 3 years into the blog. That's when people started really taking this shit seriously. They realized I was for real. I may be very opinionated. I may be very, I come out very harshly against cops, but I'm for real. I prove that, and the cops figured this shit out after a while too, and they did. And so that's it. So and that's when the media started calling me for interviews. That's when the media started paying attention to this issue as far as the rights of photographers. This was still. In 2014 was the Michael Brown incident. So that was a year, I say, that the media finally realized we have a police abuse issue in this country.
That's when I started, so I know what you mean.
So 2010 was when the media realized that we have an issue, a First Amendment issue with cops not respecting our rights to take pictures, which you would think they would have been interested in this in 2007 because it affects them as well. But they had I guess they had the attitude like, it doesn't matter. They had the attitude I had, I guess. Before where, these guys are a bunch of amateurs, so who cares? But, you can't, even if you think they're amateurs, they still have the rights, the same rights as journalists have. They don't have any less rights. And the more you ignore that, the more you're going to give up your own rights. This is how it works. They're going to see that until I started really pointing it out to them. And they finally got it. In 2010, the media would start, this was also in 2010 was when we did the first audit, which we didn't even call it an audit.
I was going to ask you about that as well. Is it the one at the TSA?
No, this was at the Metro Rail station. So
okay.
In Miami. So what happened was I got asked to speak in front of a journalism class at the University of Miami, which I do sometimes. I get asked to speak to these classes, and there's a guy named Stretch Ledford there, and he was a professional journalist who had a long-term journalist he was trying to get his master's in photojournalism. So he was taking his class, and he said, I had this issue with these Metro Rail security guards. They said you're not allowed to take pictures, and he'd done this research. He had talked to the county, the transit board or wherever the transit department was, and they said, yeah, you can take pictures as long as they're for personal use or editorial use. You can't take pictures for commercial use. Which I already knew that. Commercial basically means if you're selling ad, you're taking pictures for a magazine ad, for example. And the reason for that is
product and
and the reason for that is like you generally have to set up lights and tripods and cables, and it can obstruct traffic, foot traffic.
Right.
So I can understand that, but if you're just walking around taking pictures, there's nothing against that. So he goes, would you mind coming with me? And I'm going to go test out, he was going to do the audit, right? Now, we're not calling it the audit. Jeff Gray came up with that term later.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Gray I would call him, he came up with audits. He perfected them and everything, but he was inspired by what happened at the Metro Rail. So I go there with Stretch Ledford, and my goal was just to write an article on him, because I was still telling myself that I was not an activist. 2010 was when I actually had to admit to myself, yeah, I'm also an activist, because as a journalist, you're not supposed to be an activist. So I was always, people would say, you're an activist, Carl. I was like, no, I'm not, like an insult, which it shouldn't be an insult. And so I went there just to do a story on him. So I still wasn't going to get involved. I was going to record and do anything. Of course, I got dragged into it because then, he's taking pictures. I'm shooting with a little video camera. And you know, security guard comes up and gives us the same bullshit that you got to turn everything off and you got to turn it on. And he points his finger at me and I said, I'm not going to turn it off. Cops come, you know, they call Homeland Security. It was like it was a long, we were there for a while. And at the very end, they told us that we were permanently banned from the Metro Rail. But they had no, you know, wasn't a good process. And so I even told them at the very end of the video, I go, are you banning me? And the cops pointed to the security guard and said, you're banning me? Yeah. Okay, you're setting yourself up for a huge lawsuit. And he didn't care. And so that was the start of my battle with the Metro Rail. And then I went back. So that got, and while I was doing that, okay, let me think. Yeah, while I was doing that, I was tweeting about it. You know, I was big on Twitter at the time. I was tweeting about it, putting it up on social media. So I was getting some attention, and the whole thing. When I wrote the story that night, being permanently banned got a lot of attention, and it went viral. And so I was getting called by media, and this one media company called HDNet TV, which was owned by Mark Cuban, who is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. I'm not even sure if it still exists because it was a special kind of, you need to have a special, it was like satellite TV or something. So they flew in from Denver and they were going to do a whole article on my thing with the Metro Rail on my website and everything. And so the guys are like, where do you want to do this interview? I said, well, let's go back to the Metro Rail. And they're like, well, aren't you permanently banned? They go, yeah, let's go back. You know, and they're like, all right, let's go back, right? And so I go back and I walk in with my camera and they're standing back there with their big cameras. And I walk in with the reporter and immediately they knew who I was. They said, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. And I start recording. And then one security guard starts running after me like a bull. I'm like the matador and she's trying to get my camera. And actually, even before that happened, another security guard came and hit my camera out of my hand without me knowing. Because I was talking to this one lady, security guard, and she was like, you got to leave, you got to leave. And boom, he knocks out of my hand, he picks it up, puts it in his pocket. So I took out my iPhone. And this was the first time I actually ever recorded a video on my iPhone because, you know, the quality sucked at the time. The iPhone quality sucked. Which, you know, they came out with a video in 2009. So it was still a year. And, you know, even though the iPhone came out in 2007, the video did not come out until 2009. So that had a lot to do with this movement that became, that we're in now, that we're seeing, where this awakening is what I call it, when people just started, where the cops know that, well, we know we have the right to record it.
Right, and I wanted to talk to you about that too, and sort of what you thought about like the current state of First Amendment auditing and stuff like that too. But I also want to talk about a couple different things as well. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me finish it. I'll get to that. So,
yes.
So I started recording, and then on the iPhone, and you know, like this, I didn't know, I wasn't aware of the horizontal thing yet.
Right.
The security guard tries to knock it out of my hand, and I punch him. I punch the security. It's a very instinctive reaction. And, and as soon as I punched, I was like, fuck, you know, I'm shit, you know. So he pulls out a baton, and I walk out. He still has my camera, you know, and so the guards, I mean, the camera guy, he got it, but, you know, the actual punch was not caught because my back was turned, but you could hear it. You could hear the punch. You could hear him hit in my hand, and bah! And I said,
are these videos out there? Hmm? Are these videos public for us to see?
That one is hard to find because HDNet TV, they sent me a DVD, but there's a block on the DVD. I can't even see it. So there's some, so no, unfortunately,
okay. Shoot, I'd like to link it in this video.
There is a video where I think that where I'm holding the camera and I punch him, but you can't see the punch. You can see everything go down. And I walk out there and I'm like, yeah, he hit me. And like, yeah, we saw. And so the reporters were like, the journalists were like, hey, you know, the cops are coming. But they call the cops and do you want to leave? You know, they're trying to help me. And I said, no, I'll stay here, you know, because this fucker has my camera. Number one, and number two, if I leave, they know who I am anyway, right? So I'm not going to go far. And so I waited, and they wanted to put me in jail for battery. And this guy was all bleeding, and paramedics came, and they had to see the video. We had to show them the video, and the journalists couldn't show them the video until they got permission from their lawyers in Denver, who had given them permission. And Mark Cuban got a word of it. He basically got the video, so he posted it up, and it went viral. He put it up on the internet. I guess I wish I could find it. Yeah, I tried very hard recently looking for it, and not out there. so that got a lot of attention, you know. So then, you know, I go back to the Metro like another month later with 25 photographers. This was the protest. This is when I said, I'm a fucking activist, right? For now I am, you know, now the gloves are off. Now, you know, I'm done. You know, they already arrested me twice. You know, I already beat those 2 charges. You know, I mean, the blog is already it's going to another level now. The mainstream media is already reporting on it. They're flying people down to interview me. You know, I was like, yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, I never expected this, but, you know, I'm going with it. I'm like, fuck it, you know, let's go with it. You know, my goal was always to educate and inform. So here we go. And then, you know, I'm still writing and stuff. And 2012, I was arrested again, Occupy Miami, and
Miami. Yeah, I watched some of those videos again, and that's just crazy. And I'm so glad you're able to recover the deleted footage.
Yeah. I mean, there's people. I mean, it really. That footage, it was, and the only reason I was arrested was because I told the cop, the PIO, she was blocking my shot when they were arresting somebody else. So as I was recording, they were all blocking. I said, don't block my fucking shot. Don't block my fucking shot, you know. And she took it very personal. And she also took it very personal that I was not embedded with her like the other mainstream media journalists were. They were embedded with her for protection because they were afraid of the protesters. But, you know, I knew the protesters. They weren't even, I mean, they're not, you know, they're not very, I mean, I don't know. I'm not afraid of them. You know, they didn't make me scared. But I guess they made the journalists scared because they were wearing all these helmets and shit. You know, and
they wanted to be friendly with the police, I suppose.
Yeah. And so I'm out there. I'm taking it from with the protesters. And at one point, you know, they're bringing out the tear gas because they were not evicting as quick as they wanted them to. So I put up a bandana over my face. And they claimed, oh, that's what made me a protester, not a journalist, and that's why I should have been arrested. You know, but no, I wasn't trying to hide myself. I don't like to hide myself.
That's not illegal in Florida anyways, is it?
No, but I don't believe so. But they were saying, well, that's what made him, because, you know, I was arguing that I was a journalist because they were saying, well, we ordered the activists to evict, to leave, you know, and they didn't. So they did. Actually, most of them did. But I was the one that stayed there. But I stayed there as a journalist because I looked at all these other journalists there. And as I told myself, as long as they are there, I'm going to stay here. You know, I don't care if they're with the cops or not. I don't care about that. You know, I'm going to be here. But the cops did. So I was arrested. And, you know, the media was actually recording my arrest. And they never published it. They never, and one local media station was actually good. They had already done an interview with me. They were going to run a big story on me and everything. And after that happened, I thought it was going to become better. They didn't do it. They dropped it. And the Miami Herald came out with a story that was really biased against me. Basically, you know, and it goes back to what I was saying before. When she's a PIO, so she talks to these reporters every day. And so she told them that Carlos Miller was nothing but a troublemaker. And they were able to dig up records from the early 90s when I was arrested for disorderly conduct and stuff like that, or concealed weapon, you know, early 90s. And they say that we don't know the outcome of his recent cases. When not only have I been writing about him, but they're all the public record. And not only that, but the local bloggers in Miami who did not even like me were writing about it. and they were the ones who even came out of my defense when the Miami Herald came out. One of them said, you know what, I know I've been very critical of Carlos, but, you know, the Miami Herald really fucked this up because, you know, he went on the internet and goes, I could show you the results of his cases right here. It took me 5 minutes. And yes, I was angry about that, wrote about it, and they ignored it. And this organization, Pointer Institute, which is this journalism organization, is like the trade organization. You know, it's a journalistic organization. It's an institution that is very well respected. So when they called me for an interview and I told them what's up, and they called the Herald to say what's going on, the Herald said, okay, we'll run a correction or whatever. And so now the Herald doesn't talk to me, unfortunately. I don't really care, actually, but, you know, whatever. But I mean, I say unfortunately because, you know, it's stupid because, you know, I mean, there's stories that we could talk about, I could talk about, you know, but neither does the TV media either. Only the Miami New Times. They've always been, but they're the independent media. And they recently hired me to write their marijuana story. So you know, in 2013, it was my 4th arrest. I was on the Metro Rail. That is a viral video as well. And I was taking pictures of a building on the Metro Rail. I had a friend in town, and Metro Rail security guards came in and basically beat the shit out of me, dragged me down the stairs. That's on the internet as well. They put me in a chokehold where I was saying, I can't breathe. And
Wow.
I thought I was going to die there. I remember thinking that what a stupid way to die. What a stupid way to die by because I took pictures. Not that I regret it, but what a stupid way of dying. And they just kept tightening the fucking thing. This is why every time I see these videos of Eric Garner and Kelly Thomas and all these people who say I can't breathe, I go. I mean, or even before that, they say that I go. I relive my experiences. This is why I don't like doing this anymore, to write up these stories, because I relive these experiences and I shake. Actually, I have a
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, I do have that, and it does come out, but part of that, I guess that's one of the reasons why PINAC was so successful, because a lot of the anger and the passion and that feeling that was in me, I had to express it, so it came out, and it drove PINAC, and it certainly wasn't money that was driving it. So, but now that everybody's writing about it, now it's very common. You got like the auditors, and you got all these media, the mainstream media is finally writing about it. You have a bunch of other independent sites writing about it. Now I have tons of competition. It's now, it's time for me to move on and do something else. But, PINAC's still there, and it's been in its 12th year. So here we are,
Right. And, one of the things I want to talk about too that I absolutely love, and whenever I, get people that want to listen and they let me show them videos of stuff like, different types of activism and do like testing and stuff like that. I like to call it First Amendment tests. One of the ones that come to mind that I always show people is the fair DUI in Coral Gables. Is it Coral Gables?
Yes, Coral Gables.
Yes. When you guys did that, it was so well planned. And it's just, in my opinion, a really incredible example of activism. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, Warren Redlick, he's an attorney. He wrote Fair DUI. He's a fair DUI attorney. He lives up in Palm Beach. And at the time, Grant Stern, who no longer works for PINAC, and anyway, that's all I'll say about that. But he was with us, and so we took my car through the DUI checkpoint, and the plan was for me to step out with my camera and record right there from right there while they're driving through. We had a 360 camera set up, so Warren was driving my car. Grant was in the passenger seat.
Real quick, I'm sorry. Can you explain real briefly what the 360 camera is, just really quick?
It was a camera that recorded in 360. It was 360 cameras are, I guess now they're common, but this was one of the first 360 cameras. So we were trying to sell them on PINAC, and we were using one of them to record, the DUI thing, and so you could record the front, the back, everything, and we had it screwed onto my dashboard. And it doesn't look like a camera. The problem with that camera is it heated up a lot. That's one of the things I did not like about it, but it heated up a lot. So it was there on the dashboard. So it doesn't look like a camera. So the cops didn't know what it was. They ended up recording themselves, and it's pretty funny. So I'm getting off the car. They're going through the DUI checkpoint, and I start recording, and they're going through there, and he refuses to roll down his window, and he's putting up his license on the window, which is, that the law says you can do that. Apparently, that's what he was saying. No, I'm not even sure what the law is now, because he went to court, and I'm not sure if he won. I don't think he won. Don't quote me on that. I haven't been following up on that because, like I said, I got so.
But he was charged with a crime. They did charge. Was it with the resisting?
I'm not sure. This is what I don't want to be. I'm going to be quoted on it, but don't quote me like record wise, because I'm not sure. He went to court for something. It may have been a civil suit. You would have to talk to him. I'm not sure.
Okay.
What happened. All I know is that I guess they took him to jail. And then he got out of jail. So he may have beat that charge, but maybe he had issues with the civil suit. I'm not sure because I just couldn't follow. There's so much going on, and I got so burned out that I said I can't do this anymore. I can't. I mean, enough is enough. And for my own personal health. So I'm not sure. So anyway, we go through there, and they pull him out of the car. And he had a gun, but he has a concealed weapons permit. And they took the camera. They started searching my car, and they're sitting there and discussing what they're going to do. And we're hearing everything, and they're discussing how they're going to charge. I guess they're going to charge Grant Stern because even though he had nothing on him, but there was a weapon in my car, which was a blackjack. A blackjack, I don't even think that's illegal, but it's a blackjack. I mean, most of the cops even know what it was. They're like, "What is this?" One of the cops who came from New York said, "Oh, there's a blackjack." it's a leather, it's a piece of lead with leather, and it can do some damage.
So really quick, I just want to back up just so people kind of understand sort of what happened. They went through this checkpoint. Everybody had to leave. The cops searched the car. They took this 360 cam off the dash. They took it off because I believe it was stuck with some adhesive or something. And then they're talking. They don't know how to turn it off. They're trying to figure it out. It's all hot, and it's recording them guys, the cops, talking and trying to figure out what they're going to do.
Right. So they're sitting there, and so yeah, we can charge them with possession of a weapon, right? And they're discussing that, and yeah. So, and they're like, what is this? What is this? We don't know. They didn't know what it was. It doesn't look like a camera. And there's no like if I remember correctly, I don't even think there's a real good on and off switch on it. It's like,
I think they thought it was a compass.
Right. Yeah. It looked like, who knows what it could have been, but.
Right. I'm going to link the video in the description so you guys so everybody who watches can take a look.
Well, I haven't even used it in a while. I don't have the camera there. So anyway, so. that was a good experience. That video went viral, and it's stupid, because they have all the DUI checkpoints, and it's good to challenge the law. It's good to challenge the law like that, and because there's just a lot of journalists, and I know this because I haven't worked with them, and I never agree with them on this because I've always had a different perspective of police. But a lot of journalists tend to believe that what police say is the gospel. And I remember in 2010, there was a story that another one of my stories that went viral was a guy in Baltimore. What was his name? Anthony Graber. And it was in 2009 or 2010, but I wrote about it in 2010 where he was riding his motorcycle and he got pulled over. He didn't even get pulled over. Some guy cut him off, a cop with plain clothes and an unmarked car, and gets out with a gun and didn't identify himself as a cop.
I think I saw that video. It was like an exit ramp or something, and then the guy just comes out just with his pistol ready.
So Anthony Graber had a camera on his helmet, and then he uploaded that video, and then the cops raided him and took him to jail. And his mom called me. His mom called me because I had wrote the article before of the video. His mom called me and said, hey, they put him in jail. And I was like, what?
Why did they put him in jail?
For wiretapping. That was when they started using wiretapping laws against people who recorded, because the cops are they'll invent shit, they don't care. So they started fabricating. They go, they started looking for laws, I guess, and they got him a wiretap and say he recorded the audio without this guy's consent, which is against the law, they were saying. And so I interpreted that law differently, and how it eventually was determined. So she called me and told me this, and meanwhile the mainstream media, they wrote an article about it, and they're quoting police saying, well, police say it's illegal. So, and I was like, bullshit. No, just because police say that doesn't make it illegal. So this guy gets out of jail. His mom said, okay, he got out of jail. Give him a call. So I called him, and he said, I don't want to talk. I just got out of jail. It was a Friday night. I remember this very clearly. I had plans to go out that night. And I was like, look, man, just talk now. Let's get the story out there. Let's talk. So he agreed to interview. We talked for like an hour and a half, right? I didn't go out. I ended up having a couple of whiskeys while I'm interviewing this guy. And I wrote the story. That went hugely viral. And basically, I called, the media was wrong. And the media realized they were wrong. And that's when things started changing. They started saying, wow, okay, we can't maybe trust police. Maybe not. Okay, now, because now you're seeing this shit on a regular basis.
Their credibility is at stake now when they start trusting what the police say and using it as gospel.
Yeah, what happened was, after there were several lawsuits, including the Glick decision, that may have been 2009, I was out of Massachusetts. A lot of decisions were coming out, and so it was around 2010 when the cops would begin to say, okay, yeah, they have the right. They were still fighting it. It took them a few years. 2012 was still going on, but when it's by 2014, they're mainly respecting people's rights. And that's when we started seeing a lot more police abuse. That's when we started seeing a lot more, for example, in Michael Brown, the reason that actually ever became an issue was because they left Michael Brown's body on the street for 4 hours. So for 4 hours, people were videotaping and taking pictures and talking about it on Twitter, and it kept going viral and viral. And the other reason was because this is a long pattern of abuse against this mostly white police department, against the mostly black residents. And as the Department of Justice later determined, they're basically using this as just for money, just cracking down on these people for money. And they do this all over the country. It was nothing unique. So, you had all this tension boiling up. So the Michael Brown thing it blew up only because if they would have cleared his body, that probably would have just been another incident that would just kept boiling up. But that incident the body on the street, they felt really insulted, and the people were all over the country talking about it. And
it was like a trophy kill or something. It's like they're standing there with it, yeah, it was pretty disgusting.
Right. So all that, because a lot of people say, well, why are they protesting? Well, Michael Brown, he was a thug, they say, and it's, regardless of what you think of him, the reality is there's a lot more thuggery coming out of the police department over the years than out of the community, because these people in the community are getting in jail, they're getting arrested. The people in the police department are getting away with their crimes, and this is true. This happens everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So, but what happened is it blew up. There's years and years and decades, and that's what happened in Ferguson. And now people are paying attention. Now people are paying attention to police abuse. Black Lives Matter came out of that, and that also further divided the country, because a lot of people just can't they just don't want to speak bad against cops.
Yeah.
They think, oh, we may need them one day. Which my attitude on that is well, number one, if you really need a cop at that right moment, you can't really call them, because they're not going to just materialize right away. And
after the fact.
Right. And number two is you're always rolling the dice anyway when you're calling the cops, because every department has their psycho cops. Every department has their cops who abuse steroids and who have hair trigger temper. Every department has that, and every department protects those cops. So it's the luck of the draw. You may get the cop who might not be that guy, but you may get a cop who is that guy. And why take a chance?
Yeah.
So it's like a last resort. You're going to call cops, but a lot of people, as we see around the country, people calling cops like they're ordering pizza. We got to call the cops because
barbecue. Someone's selling water on the street.
Or even over a dispute over a convenience. This woman in Arizona where she called the cops because she felt that she was shortchanged by the individual. You call management, or whatever. I mean, or just
right.
Cops
don't call a bunch of guys with guns and that are.
Cops don't do anything. I mean, you have to understand, cops also don't want to do anything. They don't want to do anything unless they can really get an adrenaline rush out of it. If it's just some bullshit thing, they don't care about it. They're not going to waste their time with it. If they can find a way, if it's going to allow them to beat people up, and that makes them happy. And also they can increase revenue. So which is why we still have these marijuana busts, because that increases revenue.
Yeah.
But the convenience store shit, nobody cares about that. They're not going to care about that.
Right. So First Amendment audits, do you watch them now?
No, I don't. I don't watch audits unless someone tells me you got to watch this. You got to watch this. That's when I rarely don't watch. I don't keep up with. There's a lot of drama. I've noticed that with the world of auditing. So I don't really keep up with it. And again, I don't really keep up with a lot of this stuff PINAC related. It's just a lot of that. I still to this day have not watched the Philando Castile video, because it just got to a point where I can't watch any more of this shit. I can't watch the stupidity in the police part. I can't, it just gets me very frustrated. And I have to relive what I gone through. And I find that I'm much healthier when I don't do that. I sleep better. I eat better, all that shit. So I don't watch a lot of these videos. Sometimes I do. I don't like to watch them. And I don't watch the auditing just for that reason, because I try to just get away from this whole. I proved my point. More than I should have. I proved it over and over. And now I'm trying to educate people on the medical marijuana issue. That's a big deal right now, because there's still a big stigma on the weed, and it shouldn't be. That's one of the stupidest things ever. And this is the perfect example of the government not being very trustworthy, because the federal government is still saying that marijuana they don't see any medical value in it. And when there's how many fucking studies have proven otherwise, right? I mean, we have study after study after study, in addition to all the anecdotal evidence that we hear, including my own, right? So, but they're doing it for control, right? And so that it's, what I'm seeing now with the marijuana issue in Florida, especially, where 71% of voters voted for medical marijuana, which is a state that we can't agree on anything. It's very purple, as they say, and you never know who's going to win. It goes down to a wire at all times. We don't agree on much, but on the weed thing we do. But so we still have politicians trying to like screw that up. So I'm thinking this is opening people's eyes. I know I'm talking to a lot of people actually, and it's opening people's eyes, and including older people like my mom, who always had, who over years, oh, the marijuana is not good, and now she's seeing it, and she's like, she's using CBD cream for her face and for the pain, and it works. It works, So it's important we remove the stigma. Just like it was very important for me in 2007 to open people's eyes that not all cops are trustworthy. This is not Norman Rockwell's police. There's a lot of abuse going on out there, and there's a lot of cover-ups. And the best way to combat that is just point your cameras at the cops. That's it. It obviously hasn't done anything because it continues, but at least we're more aware that it's happening. And if it just makes more people aware, maybe it makes more people record, that actually, okay, and if they're going to continue getting away with murder, which they probably will, at least the rest of us are more aware of what's going on rather than being blinded by the bullshit of the blue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anything else that you want to say? Like, what are you working on now besides the marijuana?
The auditing, Jeff Gray is, is in my opinion, the master at auditing, and he, one thing about myself is I'm very high strung, and especially down here, people tend to be all high strung. And so these guards and cops they can be very volatile, And so one of the reasons I don't do these audits is, well, after the Metro thing, I say, that's not worth my life, and I know if I ever get touched again, I'll probably respond by punching, which I've done before. And so and I know it'll probably be, I'm probably going to be quicker in a punch this time because I'm not going to allow anyone to paw their hands all over me when I'm doing nothing but recording. So, but Jeff Gray, this guy is the complete opposite of me. These people will make fools of themselves, and he'll just be calm, cool, and collected. I've seen the cops take the camera from his hands and him grab the camera back. The cop will grab it back again. He'll grab it back. How does that work out without throwing any real punches, But that's why, and Jeff Gray really, he perfected that, and he called me one day, we're talking about it. He goes, I'm going to start calling these audits. So Jeff Gray gave it, he made it official. But if you ask Jay, he said he was inspired by my Metro thing. So, but yeah, he was, and then Philip Turner came, and he was inspired by Jeff Gray, and he did very well too. He does very well too. He's all about being very calm, cool, and collected. Which is, which I am too high strung to do that, so I'd rather just write about, that's my talents right there. And allow the people who do it well to do it. So, but then what I've seen lately, and I guess this is, I get interviewed a lot by mainstream now about the auditing thing, because they always tell me, well, I've done all the research I've done, it always comes back to you, the auditing. And they ask me, well, what do you think about the new auditors? And I go, I don't really have much of an opinion, and they ask me, do you think, do you disapprove of their tactics? And I tell them, look, I don't have any opinion, because as long as they're not representing PINAC, right, then I'm not going to have an opinion on their style, because, I don't want to waste my time worrying about everybody, obsessing about what other people do. It's not my thing. You know what I mean? But like, the Arizona Republic interviewed me a year ago. It just came out this year because one of the Arizona auditors was arrested. I haven't even seen that video. They didn't even put it in the article, I don't think. Or maybe they did, but I didn't see it. But yeah, so I get asked this shit all the time. But I do point to Jeff Gray. I always tell them, Jeff Gray, if you want to talk to someone who's the right way to do it, it's Jeff Gray and Philip Turner. I mean, these are the people I say do it the right way.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the things too. I really wanted to talk to you. I'm really glad you were talking to me tonight, because I see a lot of, I don't really want to talk about it too much, but there's just, it's a lot different now, auditing, than the way it was a few years back when Jeff Gray was doing it and Philip Turner was doing it. And, I see a big change, and you guys are the ones who motivated me. And I don't know if it kind of upsets me seeing how things are kind of going now. So I just kind of maybe wanted to see if you had some kind of insight, maybe some advice or ideas, or any way to kind of.
Yeah, one of the plans I have is, and I've been working on this for a long time now, is it's really complex. It's a big project. It involves many things, many aspects of it. But one aspect is going to be an online journalism university where we are going to teach journalism. Myself and a few others, who, including Jeff Gray, and I'll teach what I know best, which is the writing, and I'll talk about media law. I'll talk about the ethics of journalism. I'll talk about the history of journalism. Everything I've mentioned in my book that came out a few years ago. I'll be covering that. And I'll eventually get into just writing. That's my real strength, is writing. Jeff Gray will talk about auditing, and we have several courses there. We have others involved who are going to be photojournalists, and others who have other specialties. And we want to eventually grow, not just the cop watching thing, but just to talk about journalism in general. I'm going to have one of my friends who's a travel writer. He'll be teaching as well, and maybe business writers. So that's the idea. It's taking some time to put together. We want to do it right, and I'm still working on that. But
that's a great idea.
But that's the idea. So the idea is like journalism. There's we all have the right to record. And what people call journalism, it can be subjective, right? But what is not subjective is you have the right to record, and that's protected by the First Amendment. But what we want to do is if you want to do this, if you want to take this seriously, you want to take auditing seriously, you want to take journalism seriously. For example, if you want to cover your local town hall, your local city hall, which is really need people to do that, then they'll learn from us, because we'll teach them. Because as we know right now, the journalism is declining as far as city hall coverage goes. The newspapers cannot cover it. They don't have the resources anymore. The TV media doesn't really cover it. And there's a lot of stuff going on at the local level that doesn't get covered. Now, if you have people, every community has these gadflies that they want to, every community has this, and they may have time to do their investigations, but they may not know how to do it journalistically. They may need guidance. Right, so we would guide them. We would teach them how to do it, but we will also guide them. We'll be like consultants, and we'll guide them because it will, through public records request and through the writing, through the legality, through the ethics, through interviewing, what questions to ask, and everything. It's, like I say, it's not just going to be me. It's going to be a lot of us, and so I figure if we have people like that in these communities, we can start getting local media coverage. Because I remember when I started PINAC. The blogosphere was pretty big back then, much bigger than it is now. There's a lot of local blogs. You had some who were actually trying to cover City Hall, or trying to do, everyone was trying to do their thing. And Facebook kind of killed that. Twitter kind of killed that. Everyone moved to these social media platforms. So the desire is there. And if we can teach them how to do it, how to publish their own stuff, maybe launch their own pages, do whatever, people would pay for that. And if we charge something like maybe $20 a month, say, I'm not saying that's the price, but I would like to make it very affordable. So that way, if we have like thousands of people join up, then we can make money and basically dedicate ourselves to teaching. And it's something I really want to do. I just turned 50 years old last year. So I've been doing journalism I've been doing journalism since 16 years old. I wrote from a high school newspaper. I've done a lot. I continued doing journalism even after I said I wasn't going to do it at the corporate media level anymore. I was able to, do new things that no one expected at the time. So now I want to teach. I want to pass down my skills to kids too, the kids at the local level. That's part of the project as well. And it's hopefully we get it together. It's going to take money. It's going to take dedication. I got the passion to do that. And as far as running PINAC the way I've always run it, just me writing the story. I will write stories. I do go. Sometimes I go days without writing stories because I'm busy on other things. Sometimes I write stories, but I don't have the energy or the dedication to write 3 times every day. But we have writers who do that. And if we get, these projects start coming together, then I'll have funding to hire more writers. And not only that, we can train the writers. That's one of the things I love doing, training them. We can hire them. But I do believe it's, to pass down to one of the best things I can do on this earth, is to pass down my skills. And because over the years, people have always told me, a lot of people told me, hey, I've learned a lot from you. I learned a lot from you. When I was not even really trying to teach them, I was just showing them by example. And now they've actually said, let me just show you, guide you through this, and let's get everybody else who's good at what they're doing. People will learn a lot. And I think we can get some funding, we can get some grants, and I think if people just pay their $20 a month, it'll go for the cause, and they'll come away with a lot. So that's the idea. So that's what I have in the future, going in the future as far as PINAC related. in audit. So yeah, we go back to the audit thing. So yeah, Jeff Gray will be teaching, you know, how to proper way to do the audits. Now there are people out there who do audits just for the YouTube hits, the whatever the the views, or I'm not even sure if Google's paying anymore. I know they demonetized my shit, so I'm not sure they're demonetizing the auditors or not. So
Some of them do, some they don't.
yeah, if they want to do that, that's fine. You know, I don't care. You know, that's how I answer to the people, the reporters who ask me that. I don't really care. You know, why am I going to worry about other people? But, you know, if people want to learn how to do it right, they're going to learn from Jeff Gray. They're going to learn from the man who came up with the term auditing and perfected it, and who inspired many, many, many people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to say, like any social media shout outs, any websites, things like that you want to lead people to, any way they can contact you?
Yeah, well, you know, like our page, Photography is Not a Crime. Luckily, we're one of the only pages that did not get, well, one of the few pages that did not get like taken down by Facebook, which was interesting. You know, they took down, you know, Free Thought Project, Hot Block, and a few others, but they had slowed us down big time. Ever since Zuckerberg talked to Congress, and you know, I'm looking into that. I'm wondering if the cops have actually put word to Facebook and said something about me, because you know, cops do have a direct line to Facebook. We don't. But cops do, you know, and so, you know, that, I wonder what they talk about, you know. So yeah, I mean, we do, I mean, this past year, that did affect us, you know. Unfortunately, you know, we're dependent on page views, you know, and so if Facebook, you know, because right now most people are on Facebook, that is the biggest social media platform. So yeah, that did affect us. And so more people that like our page, and more people that click on our stories and share our stories and join the Maven. We're going to be doing the Maven as a platform I'm on now. We're going to start doing some improvements there. We're going to create groups there and try to migrate all our Facebook people over to the Maven, because with Facebook, you never know. Facebook can turn around tomorrow and say, you know, you're gone. And we have, you know, I have more than 300,000 followers on Facebook, but I can only reach a tiny fraction of them. Right. And you know, so anyway, so that's, you know, that's what we're trying to do too. That's another reason why this whole, I want to do the university, online university, because you know, I think maybe that'll just get more people clicking on our site. You know, that's, you know, it's all about, you know, it's all about, you know, we're so dependent on ad revenue, you know, so it's just a struggle. So you have to always think of new ways. You gotta, you know, because they can always pull the carpet from beneath you.
And they do it all the time.
And what happened was, you know, and I mentioned this in my book as well, like, you know, when I was a reporter in the 90s, or even in the early 2000s, there was like 5 media companies owning all the media. So when the blogosphere became a thing, you know, all these independent publishers, that was a good thing. But now we have a handful of social media companies deciding who is media, who is not. So we're actually worse off than we were before, because now it's like, they're like, what, 2 or 3 media companies rather than 5. And yeah, same shit. So it's always, you know, any time in history when something or somebody becomes too powerful, you know, that's when you got to regroup. You know, that's when you got to start looking for changes. You know, because they become too institutionalized, and it's not a good thing. You know, Facebook became too institutionalized, so now we need something new. We need something new, and that's what we're trying to find right now.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Carlos. I really appreciate you talking with me, and hopefully people can learn some things, and that'd be great if we get this thing started with the online school, because there's a lot of education that needs to be had. That's for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Hopefully, you know, by summer, hopefully we'll get something up. But who knows? You know, everything is delayed, man. There's, if things could happen as quickly as people say they would happen, then I would be showing you rather than telling you what we're doing.
Right. Well, when it does come up and you get things started, if you let me know, I'll be happy to you know, spread the word around, and you know how we do networking.
Exactly. You will know. It'll be a big news. I mean, that's the thing. Right now, I mean, it's going to require fundraising. You know, right now I'm going to see if I can talk to some venture capitalists. I got, you know, other people I'm working with for the other part of the project. So I'm trying to fund this one online university to make it independent. You know, so that's the idea. So I'm actually studying crash courses in business, MBAs as well. That's what I've been spending time on. Yeah, you got to adapt. You got to adapt to evolve. I'm not, you get left behind. That's what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. All right, well, it was nice talking to you. I'm gonna do some other things here, but like I said, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and hopefully we can get some good information out there.
Cool. Well, thanks for interviewing me. Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Figure out how to end this thing. Now, here we go.